Sounds good.
All right. So today, the only thing we really had on the agenda was hashing out some kind of contributing guide for FastAI. So
I don't know if my answer is helpful, but I posted in
no, I
that.
thought your answer was pretty good.
Maybe that's a start.
Yeah. I mean, here's let's see. Here's a link to your message, and let me post the HackMD link. Yeah, so I mean, I thought I'd just start a HackMD document. We could kind of brainstorm on there, and once we get something fleshed out, I think for FastAI, probably this kind of information will be somewhat distributed across multiple packages, but FastAI.jl is probably a good central location with pointers to everywhere else. Does that make sense, Lorenz?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, that's actually kind of a good point, Kyle, is that maybe the distributed nature of the packages might be intimidating for people. So maybe also like an ecosystem guide to show the stack and what they do and how it fits together might also be helpful.
So you mean like some more detailed developer documentation? Basically how to get around the code base, what are the dependencies, which packages are involved.
Yeah, even for not developers. I mean, I guess there's something I don't
true.
like what is the user facing package and what can I ignore, basically, because it could I don't know, I could imagine it could be intimidating. Like what is like this proliferation of all these packages? Like how do I make sense of it?
Yeah.
Coming from monolithic Python land.
So
I mean, I think one issue is that like finding places where it makes sense for somebody to contribute really depends on their familiarity with the domain, but also Julia, right? Because having some Julia experience makes it a lot easier to get around and contribute code, which is not the only thing that's you can contribute. And more experienced people, I mean, kind of, yeah, I mean, it really depends on where somebody's at, what they can contribute.
And good first issue tags.
Yeah.
And maybe a central, I don't know about GitHub's latest project management issue system, but like is there some place to keep them in an org and not distribute across packages, or like or having fed into an aggregator so they could just go to one place?
I mean, the ecosystem coordination repo is kind of like that, but and yeah, there's already awkward projects. I guess we can
Do we want to use that?
link issues there. Though I tend to look more at like the actual code repo issues than the ecosystem coordination.
Right.
And I think most people who have like some issue or something they want from FastAI.jl will post an issue there, right?
Right.
Or in one of the children packages.
Right. So maybe that's not helpful. I don't know.
well, like Brian said in the chat, we have some like FluxML org-wide projects already. I mean, I think the main issue with that is, of course, someone has to kind of it's the same thing as like using the labels on issues. You have to be diligent about applying the labels, making sure things are being sorted into the projects for that kind of information to be useful to someone.
Can't they automatically be, is there some action that can automatically, as long as you label them appropriately, be funneled in to the projects?
Yeah, there is some automation. I don't know how
Do you need anything
sophisticated
more
it
than
is.
the milestones, really?
Say that again.
Do you need anything more than the milestones that GitHub already has?
Yeah, I think there's like, I don't know if you can have milestones for projects, but let me see if I can pull up the link to one. So there's, for example, this project that Brian created. That's basically to transition, kind of ties together all the issues that across all the different repos about transitioning over to explicit explicit gradients and updates.
This is awesome.
So I mean, we could do similar stuff for like data loading. You know, you could, I mean, we already have table as like a modality in FastAI now, but that could be like an example, is you could have different problems or types of data and have like a project that ties together. Because for example, for the table data sets, you need to do stuff that's related to data sets and data loaders, which is in some set of packages, then stuff related to augmentation, which is another set of packages, and then stuff related to the actual learning methods, which is in, yeah,
that could be confusing. I think this sort of like project view is like underutilized. Also, I wonder what Chris's experience is in SciML, like how he onboards people to the web of packages and tracks issues that transect multiple packages.
I think a lot of that also has to do with a lot of contributions come from tutorials. So that's how sort of it goes when people want to implement a certain method or write a certain tutorial. They try to write it in the way that they expect it to work, and then sort of go around digging about what works, what doesn't. But I find that to be a very powerful technique because you get like a working example at the end of it as well.
yeah. I mean, I think that also makes sense for FastAI, especially because at the end you need some documentation that shows how everything ends up getting tied together.
Yeah, I agree. So kind of the, with FastAI being out for a couple months now, and kind of the core concepts and interfaces stabilizing, I think like one really important aspect of the design are the blocks and how you group functionality by the domain. So basically like everything related to vision is like you can implement unrelated to the tabular stuff, right? And I think the more stable those like core concepts and interfaces get, I think in a medium long term, it should be possible to maybe even factor like the domain specific stuff out. And I mean, not necessarily like doesn't mean that it isn't in the default FastAI install, but if that's like in a different package for vision or just a submodule or something, but something that makes it separates that out and makes it you know, and documentation telling you how to implement different stuff and making it like easier to implement or add like domain specific functionality or packages. So maybe even without needing to contribute to the core FastAI. So for example, the dataset registry system that's in there right now, like makes it possible to for third-party packages also just to add data sets for specific like kinds of blocks to the registry that you can then find to the same functions that you use in FastAI. And kind of decouple the domain-specific things from the core a bit, and then documenting, you know, well how to implement new like functionality for new domains. I think would make it a lot easier to contribute. Does it make sense?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that would definitely help clean up the code base. So there's basically less stuff that someone has to read through, source code that someone has to read through in order to know where they should add their contribution. I think in terms of the contributing guide, what do we think about having like an ecosystem overview that describes the packages, which are user facing, which are not, like Ari mentioned, and then we can have, so like for example, FastAI.jl could have a have its, you know, own contributing guide, and in FastAI.jl you can say, okay, if you want to contribute to the data augmentation pipeline, you should look here. So we can have a section like forward pointers for all the different packages, how they're organized, but we can also have forward pointers to GitHub projects for the different domains.
Yeah, so I mean, data augmentation, data loaders, I mean, they're all the separate packages, they have their own documentation, and like they're built so that they're useful on their own, right? The exception to this is DL pipelines, which I'll probably just move into FastAI at some point, because there's not much in it right now. So that's really just like a common dependency package. But yeah, data augmentation, data loaders, flex training, they should all have their own documentation and contributing guides. And then if that's like documented well in FastAI, you know, let's say you want to add some kind of thing that could be a data set, it could be a data pre-processing step, it could be a callback, and then basically it'll tell you like where that should go. So like a high level data pre-processing step that's an encoding in FastAI, or one of like a domain specific FastAI package. Callback could go right into Flux training, if that makes sense. And yeah, giving an overview of where to go, and tutorials and examples, you know, of things like how you would implement them. And there's just a lot of documentation still missing. Like there was there is an issue that was recently opened on the FastAI.jl repository also on like better documentation for encodings and blocks, how to implement them yourself. And yeah, lots of that stuff still missing. I plan on getting to that at some point.
Yeah, I mean, that's also the kind of stuff that we could create issues for that wherever the documentation needs to go. And then same thing, collect all of those in a project, a documentation project, and just put in the FastAI contributing guide. If you want to contribute documentation, go here, and this is the list of issues.
Yeah, I mean, for this like really core stuff, like how to implement an encoding, it's not a good first issue to use the label. But yeah, stuff like writing tutorials, like maybe implementing things for a new domain that like cover like how to extend FastAI basically. I think that could be really good like starting points for newcomers, and that kind of depends on the better core documentation, I guess.
Yeah, and also there was some interest in working on porting the FastAI book from people from FastAI Python people in the Discord channel.
Recently?
So I'm sorry.
Recently, like, has there been more people talking about it?
Recently, I a couple months ago.
Okay, that's the last I heard. Yeah.
So I think, I mean, like there was, for example, the probability theory for data science, whatever got ported in like 10 seconds, like a day. I don't know. So I think if we have a skeleton in the core infrastructure, one thing could be have people going through porting the book and opening issues of functionality that doesn't exist, and then working on that functionality. Or so I don't know.
I mean, the book, like much of what is written is very specific to Python FastAI. And I mean, many of the code snippets from the functionality and what they do, especially the high level things, probably, yeah, you can translate that pretty quickly. But I'm not sure how like that could be published, because I'm pretty sure we can't republish the copyrighted text of the originals.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were told that we can port the code, but not the book.
Yeah, that's what Jeremy said.
Okay.
Having a repo that just collects code examples is fine, but as Lawrence rightly mentioned, it is very Python focused.
Yeah, and many examples and discussions there are very specific to the abstractions that FastAI uses, especially for the low level things aren't always the same.
Okay.
Well, how about today? Can we agree upon a broad list of topics that would be like the main headings in the FastAI documentation, and then maybe we can get started on collecting some issues under each of these topics? Because I think the first step is creating the issues where they need to be in order to be able to link to them appropriately in the contributing guide or wherever it ends up being.
What do you mean with headings? Like just pages
Like,
of documentations that are missing? Or?
Not for documentation itself would be a heading, or like tutorials could be a heading. I'm thinking like in the FastAI contributing guide, like you were describing, it would say if you want to implement a new callback, right? You want to make a callback that you contribute as a default to FastAI, then you should look here to implement that. And so, I mean, that's a very specific one.
Yeah.
But I think just like high level topics like tutorials, training pipeline, data loading pipeline, augmentation, these could be high level topics.
Yeah. And then, so, I mean, one thing is having an overview of that actually in the docs. And then the other thing is collecting issues for these different things and what's useful. And then like also useful starting point for first-time contributors could be, taking a standard workflow that's maybe already in the docs, but trying out a new technique. So it could be some different pre-processing, like label smoothing, or different learning rate schedule or something like that. Like some kind of like almost like a recipe, just showing how you can adapt the library to do something new.
Yeah.
do we also need like what is deep learning in Julia, like philosophy? Like it's just Julia, basically, with like normal abstractions, as opposed to like special tensor class or whatever. I'm looking at the Flux documentation, and I don't know. Like if I were coming from PyTorch, I'd be like, what is all like is it obvious that you could just use normal arrays? I don't know. Do you guys do you hear what I'm getting at, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots we can.
If you go on the website, right, we have links to a lot of these different tutorials. Even in getting started guide, I think we're working on that. We have a document writer basically on board to help with that. Should be adding some soon. But I mean, I think the documentation is generally pretty clear about using regular arrays. We do that across the not just Flux documentation, but also in various tutorials and Model Zoo and wherever, right? And even in just the website itself. So if I go to fluxml.ai.
Okay, yeah, I see it says existing Julia library is differentiable and can be incorporated directly into Flux models. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, one consideration, there's also like the target user group, because Python FastAI is geared not just to beginners in deep learning, but also to beginners to programming. Well, not complete beginners, but and if you just want to do high level deep learning and you're not super experienced with programming, software development in general, I'm not sure if it's necessarily important for them to know that this is not built on C++. I mean, not at least not like as a first thing. Like
Yeah, I don't
could be
mean
a super
like,
cool thing to find out in like, oh yeah, you can extend it really easily. You can write your own CUDA kernels, whatever.
I mean, literally the first line on the FluxML website is Flux is a 100% pure Julia stack and provides lightweight abstractions on top of Julia's native GPU and AD support. Right?
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think I kind of, yeah, I'll just echo basically what Brian's posting in the chat, is that Logan and others are already working on first time to Julia, first time to programming, stuff like you can just use an array if it's your first time to Flux. Like these tutorials do exist and there's more coming, so we can just forward point to them.
All right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, that the primary audience coming from other frameworks. Yeah, it's also much easier to sell those folks, and you don't have to take that much of a general like approach. Like you don't have to explain everything. That's true. I mean, should we focus more on transitioning from PyTorch? What's difference? I think that would also make for valuable documentation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, yeah, that would be a good thing to add to the documentation, is like a PyTorch cheat sheet, basically.
I mean, I'm also excited for when ONNX.jl, when it just becomes possible to import any, like I export PyTorch model to ONNX and then just import it in Julia. I was also thinking of trying out using PyCall just to write a custom training loop in Flux training and see if I can just write a PyTorch in Julia. I haven't gotten around to it.
Well, Mike a while ago showed an example of like using PyTorch, I think, layers in a flux model with it getting the gradient of like hooking the gradient into zygote somehow. Is that what you mean?
I mean, we can do that. We can directly
No,
call into.
that's torch.jl, right? With the C++ bindings.
No,
no, it's just
no, it was through Python. It wasn't torch.jl.
okay. No, I was just
we can natively call into torch AD as well, AutoGrad.
okay. No,
Yeah.
I mean what I meant was just writing a PyTorch training loop with PyCall and having it
I mean, we
interact
could
with
do that.
like easily with the
but-
data pipelines in FastAI in the data loading.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, we can definitely do that. Just PyCall it. And honestly, a lot of folks are probably using it that way. But we can also integrate it deeper into some of the Julia parts. So for example, we can reuse a lot of the training loop if all we really need are in, say, the gradients or something, because that's going to be the critical part in most training loops. That or getting some esoteric model going or something like that. As long as if you just don't have the implementation in Julia, that is, most models are pretty easy to port. I would say.
Yeah, I think the more PyTorch and like the more we can reuse from PyTorch, the better.
Brian just posted in the chat the PyTorch Lightning landing page where they translate like a long PyTorch example to a short PyTorch Lightning example. Brian, are you thinking in terms of PyTorch to Julia or from Flux to FastAI.jl example? One thing I was thinking of the 4 lines of code to train in FastAI.jl. Since they're all like independent, I had this in some design document. I'm not sure if I ever properly published that. But it basically shows you how each line, you can drop down easily a layer of abstraction into like 3 to 4 lines each that let you customize just that one part of the pipeline, like be it like loading the data set or customizing the training loop and basically drilling down like and then each line is kind of like separate. I'm not sure if I'm getting the idea across. Kind of showing that it's easy to go from high level to low level, right? Because I mean a badly built high level API is just everything you would do in a wrapped in a function call without any arguments, right? That's okay. Yes, it's a one-liner, but you can't change it at all or customize it. And then like kind of showing that the interfaces are really like separated out nicely because you can drop into each line without having to change like the other 4 lines. And then you can drill down, and then within these 4 lines that use like the medium level API, you can again drill down if you want and do your custom stuff without really having to change anything else, because that's kind of my use case also. Like I'm dog fooding, of course, that if I want to try something new, test out a new technique, a new data set, new callback, new optimizer, I just want to change one thing and not have to like be able to reuse everything else. and that really like that's I think a big selling point to people who want to also use it to do research or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a big selling point. To me, at least. I don't know if other people appreciate it. Like to us. Like one thing I've noticed is that like things that I appreciate don't necessarily generalize. So
Right. Yeah, so that's again the question, what is the target group? Like do like how many people coming from PyTorch or the Python FastAI just want to do their 4-liners of code and deploy that model somewhere?
I don't know, but I know it's really
customizability.
Like when we were giving the presentation to Jeremy, I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like Kyle's example was cool. Your example is really cool. Like how you could just hook in and customize things. And Jeremy was just like, this is way too complicated. But where's your,
it was way too complicated for like the target audience there. And that's true. Like Jeremy's first whole course is about avoiding that mostly.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then but he's also like, since we were talking about it before, much more I think targeting, or he plans much more bandwidth for really newcomers, not people who've already used a different deep learning framework.
That's true. And he does talk about hackability. Like a lot of the Swift stuff content was about going like hacking down the lower levels, and you could show how you build your own framework. So as long as things can be simple, and I like how you talk about how you're drilling down.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've seen it. I'm working on a new documentation system as well, which kind of has this drilling down as the basic like UX with the basic interaction, where you have columns of documents and then you drill down. And I was thinking of when I like use that for FastAI, like from the README, if there's like the 4 lines of code, and then you can click on one of the lines, and then they basically expand into 5 more lines with explanation. You can click on each of those lines again to drill down further, right? And then you can explore the whole like every level of abstraction there. Wait, you just check if I have it open somewhere. Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen. Kyle, can you let me share my screen?
Try it now.
All right, okay. This one. Can you see the window?
Yeah.
So this is not for FastAI, it's just a data loader stocks because it's smaller. So this works as you start, this is from the README page. Now you can click on this link and it opens up here. You have code examples, everything. You can click on the data loader function. What other arguments can I give it while I'm reading this? So you can have different, like you don't have to switch context so much. If you're reading a tutorial, want to know what a function does, you can look it up. And then the idea was basically is for FastAI, you have like the 4 lines of code example, and then you just click on one line, and then in the second column, it expands out into like the one level lower in the software lasagna. and then you can kind of drill down, and then there's explanation at every point, and some links to reference or tutorials where you can learn more about those things. And I think that could be a really cool way to to have a first contact with the software, where if you're not familiar with everything that happens in a deep learning framework, or that you might want to do, you don't have to drill down. Like, you can see these 4 lines, and that's nice. But if you're interested in how you can customize it and you want to learn more, it's super easy to focus on the thing that you want to learn more about. Yeah.
That's really awesome. I think that's really cool.
And then, yeah, I mean, some more work to do, but want to use this for
I like
packages.
this. I mean, to borrow a phrase from Swift, progressive disclosure of complexity, where things kind of, I don't know if it's the same exact idea, but like you're kind of unraveling things, and they keep it tractable because you look at high level, but you could drill down if you need to.
Yeah, and I love that
Yeah.
eventually you get down to the source code, because I think that's one thing that always comes up with Julia stuff, is that someone's asking a question, you're like, oh, you can just read the source code, which you basically would never do if you're coming from another language, is reads the source code for a package.
Right, looking up
but it
Python,
happens.
PyTorch methods like the convolution, and you just see like, okay, following it like 3 function calls, and then you see like, yeah, it's calling to C++. Damn it.
Yeah,
Right.
this documentation dovetails perfectly with like Julia's philosophy of like layered like packages.
Yeah. So I found it important to have links to the function, so you can see the methods that are defined. Here you can open it, and then get, okay, this not perfect yet. It just passes the concrete syntax tree to find other identifiers, so you can find that this doesn't have a doc string yet. God damn it, this one does. And then you can go back, and then here you can see also for a different mode, if you're like working on something, you want to look up how a function is used, and you can look at the doc string. Maybe there's some examples here, there should be, but you can also see, oh, this is used in the overview. Okay, this documentation issues aside, there's some more writing to be done, but you can see it's used in this document, and if there was like a code example here, it would also show up here, so you can also easily find tutorials that reference like some functions.
Yeah,
and just get around.
You can definitely see the promise here once all the docs are written.
And you can even like, it doesn't have to be the docs just for one package, right? You can, the way it's built, you can easily like put a lot of packages here. So this one, it also indexes learn base, which haven't implemented rendering modules, but ignore that. But yeah, it also indexes those.
This is what we need. I mean, we need something like this, exactly.
Yeah, like you can see there's the comparison to PyTorch link on the bottom for get obs.
Yeah, and then you can click here. See the differences for every argument. This doesn't exist yet. So many empty links, but I'll fix that. Work in progress. I found it's also very useful for writing documentation, because you can always, you always have the flow from the landing page in mind. So I'm also like playing around with search, so like text search in the documents. Not done. Yeah, that's working on this. Will be nice for FastAI when it's done. sometime.
Yeah, it looks great. All right, so I mean, I guess we're getting close to the top of the hour. I just wanted to make sure that we knew what the next step was, at least for the contributing guide stuff. So at least I think what would make sense to me is to start off with the FastAI contributing guide and start writing that. And then where there's missing forward pointers, then we can go to wherever that forward pointer should point to and create whatever needs to be there and slowly work outward that way.
Yeah. And we should make a list of like core documentation that is missing. Like, I mean, one thing, of course, the package overview and where stuff goes. Secondly, documentation for core interfaces like the encodings and having some more examples of how to implement your own. That's one thing. And then second thing is also like what kind of contributions are the most helpful, and also like at the same time practicable for somewhat newcomers. Like, and so one example for that would be those like kind of recipes of how to adapt one thing and just making like a short tutorial.
Right.
Or at a bit more advanced level, like contributing some domain specific functionality.
Right.
Or like which could be like a data set, could be an encoding, could be a transform and data augmentation, right? And then that kind of builds on the previous thing of knowing where stuff goes. Should we make some issues for those things?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds good to me. I feel like definitely a missing documentation issue on FastAI would be good. And then maybe a couple issues for some example tutorials or recipes that we can think of.
Yeah. There's already an issue that was opened, not by me, on FastAI for missing documentation. But maybe we can have a one issue that tracks things that need to be done to make it easier to contribute, or maybe a project even.
Yeah, I mean, I think one issue would be good. Projects are good when you need to like collate a bunch of stuff across many repos, and it's unavoidable that it has to be across many repos. But I think having a single issue is probably the easiest because I would consider projects a pretty advanced GitHub feature that, I mean, there's people who contribute who use the built-in GitHub editor to make their PRs. So
yeah, I think
right.
Issues are more easily discoverable. Better place to start. And I think these now allow tracking like sub issues basically. So that should be good
Right.
enough.
Right. Okay, well, that sounds good to me. Does anyone have anything else, or should we wrap up for today? All right. I guess I'll see everyone. Oh, did someone want to say something? yeah, I'll see everyone hopefully at the ML call on Thursday. Otherwise in 2 weeks. Bye.
All right. Thanks for coming, guys.